from Foothills.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, grocery prices are up, time is up. According to Feed Ontario, more than 1 million people were forced to food banks just to feed their family. This is a record-shattering increase of 25%. This stark reality is fueled by the Liberal NDP carbon tax, which is driving up grocery prices. Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. Will the Prime Minister end this suffering and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
Speaker, we all suffer when we know that some of our fellow Canadians are suffering. We've made historic investments as a government, delivering programs investing in Canadians' well-being. But let's not kid ourselves. The Conservatives would cut these very programs that Canadians are relying on. They would cut childcare. They would cut the food program for kids in school, and they would increase the retirement age. They would cut, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Yes, we will cut. We will cut the carbon tax. The government's own statistics show that more than 9 million Canadians are suffering with food insecurity, struggling to put food on the table. After 9 years, the number of Canadians that are facing food insecurity is up a staggering 111%. These aren't just statistics. These are millions of parents who can't feed their kids. This is a result of the costly Liberal carbon tax and their NDP coalition partners that are driving up the costs on farmers, on truckers, and on food production. Stick a fork in this government and call a carbon tax election.
The Honourable Minister for Families.
And we've just heard it, Mr. Speaker. They have just admitted that they would cut the very programs that Canadian families are relying on. Families that are benefiting from...
Even Lawrence is laughing at
Colleagues, it's very difficult for me to hear. It's very difficult for me to hear the minister respond. I'm going to give the minister 30 seconds to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And there you have it. The Conservatives have just confirmed that they will cut the programs that Canadian families are relying on. $10 a day childcare, saving families thousands of dollars. National school food program ensuring that children are not at school hungry. Mr. Speaker, you heard it here. They plan to cut the supports that Canadian families need.
Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and after 9 years, time's up. Over the summer, I heard too many heartbreaking stories of folks struggling to get by. The NDP Liberals' carbon tax is making life unaffordable. Now, after voting for it 24 times, the NDP even say that they are abandoning the carbon tax. So my question to the minister is simple. Will the Liberals join their coalition partners to axe the carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the price on pollution and the Canada Carbon Rebate are an affordability measure. 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back than they pay in the price on pollution, and the price on pollution is also an effective and efficient way to fight climate change. That's why progressives, including many who voted for the New Democratic Party in the last election, were shocked at the position that were taken by the leader of the New Democratic Party, walking away from a plan on climate change. Shame on them. They will have to explain that to their voters down the road.
The Honourable Member from Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, the PBO disputes those very things. The carbon tax is by design meant to raise prices, and the consequences are devastating. In Red Deer, Alberta, a city of only 100,000 people, have seen usage skyrocket in recent years to 30,000, and this year they're on track to have 40,000 individuals that need help from this food bank. That's in a city, Mr. Speaker, of less than 100,000 people. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is simple. Will the Liberals call a carbon tax election so that Canadians can decide to axe the tax.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said a moment ago, the Canada Carbon Rebate and the price on pollution are in fact an affordability measure that help those that live on modest incomes the most. It is certainly true that 300 economists in this country have validated that to be true. The Leader of the Opposition and his minions across the way can make up facts, can talk about untruths, but at the end of the day, it is very clear that this is a progressive policy that helps us to fight climate change and address affordability concerns. I would ask the honourable member across the way to actually do his homework.
The Honourable Member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs up, crimes up, and guess what? Time is up. This costly coalition is hurting Canadians. Over 9 million Canadians don't know where their next meal is going to come from. That's 111% increase of Canadians facing food insecurity. And quadrupling the carbon tax will only make things worse. Canadians cannot afford any more media stunts from this costly coalition. Will the Prime Minister just end the suffering and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
Mr. Speaker, as we've just returned from the summer break, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the programs that the Conservative government professes to want to cut. Over the summer, we've made a number of announcements on new, affordable $10 a day childcare spots. Oh, look at this. 600 new spots in BC, 950 new spots in Manitoba. Oh, here we are, 5,000 new spots over the next year in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. And what do the Conservatives say? No more affordable childcare.
The
Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, taxes are going up, costs are going up, crime is up, the pressure is up on the Liberals after 9 years of this Prime Minister with the support of the Bloc. People are living in trailers, they can't afford rent. People have written in saying, how am I supposed to afford food, insurance, and so on? This is the harsh reality of 9 years of this government with its Bloc friends. Does the Bloc realize that if they keep it up, it'll mean more and more poverty for Quebecers? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no one here who believes the Conservative hypocrisy when they claim they're concerned about putting roofs over people's heads. The only thing they want to do is cut funding for construction of housing. They want to rip up all the agreements that have been signed with cities all over the country. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are going to continue building the housing people need. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and the pressure is building on the Liberal government. After 9 years, this Liberal government, supported by the Bloc, has led to disastrous consequences. People are crying for help. From Sherbrooke, the small food banks are starving. Imagine that, a food bank that's starving. But that's the situation. The centralizing, spendthrift Liberal government keeps on burning through money. But Canadians, Quebecers deserve to make a choice to have a common-sense government as quickly as possible. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd be pleased to answer an expert on infrastructure on the path to austerity. The Conservatives, look at what they've done in the regions when it comes to fisheries. They cut 80 million to science. They cut to small ports for small craft. They voted against investments in those small ports. They voted against support for families, against programs for seniors. That's all they know how to do, Mr. Speaker. All they can do is be austere for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, no sooner had we freed ourselves of the NDP, who supported the most disastrous government in history, than we found ourselves once again caught up in a saga with the Bloc Liberal coalition. What's the point of the Bloc when they vote for $500 billion of this Prime Minister's inflationary spending and his bloated bureaucracy in Ottawa, with Quebec's money adding 100,000 more public servants to the government machine? Mr. Speaker, we saw it yesterday. There's no real difference between the Bloc and the Liberals. So who or what does the Bloc Liberal coalition serve? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, my colleague can shout as loud as he wants, but Quebecers know very well. They remember what they did when they were in power. They made cuts to science, to family supports. They've cut everything they could because that's the only thing they know how to do is austerity. They don't know how to invest in the potential of Canadians, and that's precisely what they're going to do if they get another kick at the can. So Quebecers want nothing to do with the Conservatives. He can shout for all he's worth, but the Quebecers aren't listening to him. I'd just like to remind the member for Mégantic-L'Érable that after asking a question, it's important to allow someone else to answer.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc is costing Canadians a lot of money, and it's costing Quebecers a lot of money. We've witnessed the greatest expansion of the public service in history. More public services than ever, more scandals than ever. Now, they're keeping the Liberals alive. That's what the Bloc is doing. The Honourable Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, here we hear the voice of conservative austerity. People at home know what the Liberal Party has done. Investments are up. The economy is up. Quebecers know that with Liberals, we are building the future, whether it's the auto sector or elsewhere, manufacturing. We are building Canada for the 21st century. We will be there to defend Canadians. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Lissachman-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, what is the Bloc Québécois good for? Well, they're good for keeping the Liberals in power. They voted to save the Liberals more than 200 times. The Bloc Québécois voted for $500 billion in inflationary spending and helped to increase the ranks of the public service by 100,000. They pretend to help Quebecers, but they support this government. What did the Liberals promise the Bloc? The Honourable President of Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, we have the best public service in the world, and we are continuing to invest in Canadians, the most vulnerable, families, children, seniors. And what about the Conservatives? Every time they vote against these measures, we're here for Canadians. We're here to build a country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, Bloc, Liberal, same thing. They help protect the Liberals and keep them in power. So more inflationary spending, a doubling debt. So the Bloc is voting for squandering Quebecers' money. The Bloc voted for the greatest expansion of the public service ever recorded. How did the Prime Minister convince the Bloc to support this government, which has been the most disastrous and the most centralizing in Canadian history? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the secret agenda is coming out. People are afraid of hundreds of thousands of layoffs, and here we have the confirmation made by my colleague across the way. Their secret agenda is to fire thousands and thousands of public servants here in this area, in this region, and across Canada. We We have the future to care about. That member has just shown what the Conservatives' secret game is.